That's foreign pension owners. Like they sold the rail system, they sell Eurostar, they sell the Royal Mail, they sell parts of the NHS. They sell to the German government, who then puts those assets into the retirement accounts of Germans who are sitting on the beach somewhere having a great retirement because David Cameron says we can't afford to allow these assets to be enjoyed by our UK population in retirement. We want you to not have health care, and we're going to make you work until you drop dead so that we can give German retirees a big fat retirement. They can sit on the beach and take all the best spots on the beach, and the British people are, barely able to afford a decent bikini.
So if you take something that obviously you're well aware of, like PFI, that's a classic example of a situation where you've got kind of a captive public sector that is just, the wealth is just being sucked out and extracted out of that. And up and down the country, you've got tens of trusts. In fact, over 100 hospitals that were built with PFI. And I know that my local hospital, the biggest one in the country, in Bart's Health, Tower Hamlets, that's got the largest PFI. They're having to pay something like £2 million in interest a week.
How come the healthcare professionals in this country who make a living wage or make a good wage, maybe £100,000, in the system, how come they're vilified by the BBC and other media outlets as being in some way ripping the system off? And that we should instead give it to a banker who's making 20, 30, 40 million pounds a year as a rentier, scraping cash off the top and not contributing anything. How did that mindset happen? How did the outlets like the BBC get it in their head that making money in health is evil, but being a private banker, a private equity banker, is glorious?
Yeah, I mean, I think the NHS is not an isolated issue. As you know, this is part of a much bigger project of neoliberalism, of privatization, deregulation, financialization, deunionization, which has been going on obviously since the late 70s, early 80s, and that applies to every sector. And something like PFI is the use of complex financial instruments in public services in every sector.
One of the problems that I've noticed in this country is that British people lack self-respect. So what I mean by this is that the average British person has this concept of money well spent, or they wouldn't, for example, the British people won't want to spend another £1 or £2 a month to get decent broadband. They don't consider that value for money because they don't have any self-respect in a lot of ways. They're happy being second-class citizens in the digital world. In the healthcare arena, let's face it, British people, on the most part, they like to drink. They like to drink excessively, and that's their values. Having good health care, it doesn't seem part of their value system because they don't have that self-respect. People who feel like, I don't really need health care, I'm not worth it. Why should I even care? I just wanted my bottle of gin and leave me alone. So how do you educate the population to care enough about themselves to want decent health care?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very tricky, difficult question, isn't it? I mean, when you're looking at some of these lifestyle issues, which of course the tabloids love to kind of focus on, such as smokers or obesity, there are, these are multifactorial issues. And I was at a Spectator NHS debate pre-election, and obviously the general consensus from the audience was, people need to just look after themselves.
No, but I see right here in this building, you've got Terra Firma, which is a private equity firm run by Guy Hens. The people who work there have no self-respect either. They're not healthy. They're in very bad health because they have no concept of self-respect.
But this comes down to something called the social determinants of health, Max, as I'm sure you know. So we know that socioeconomic deprivation is linked to, to worse health outcomes. You're more likely to drink, you're more likely to smoke, you're more likely to have mental illness, more likely to die prematurely, to have, comorbidities, long-term conditions if you are poorer.